Hello, students, wherever you are, whenever you're looking at this. We're trying something new this week. So I will be doing the PowerPoint over Patterson chapters 14 through 16 online, and you will then come to class. We'll have an opportunity to talk about it and practice some of the skills. So here we go. The first chapter for this week was chapter 14, making requests without controlling others. And Patterson talks about, all of the skills we've learned so far in this class have been about how to communicate assertively. The next step is really making that request of someone. So we've practiced giving our opinion, we've practiced saying no, we've practiced giving positive and negative feedback, but now we're actually asking someone to do something. And for passive individuals, they often feel they don't have a right to make a request, and so avoid doing this, even when it would be helpful for them to ask for help or make a request. Aggressive individuals, this may come easier to them to make a request, but instead of making a request, they're really making a demand, and they're using it as a way to control someone's behavior, which in the end, long run, that hurts relationships. And then lastly, passive-aggressive individuals, they don't make a request, they don't make a demand. Rather, they try to create this scenario or this situation so to get what they want. So the book gave the example of someone who is upset that their friend never puts gas in the car when they borrow the car, and so they leave it on empty with the hope that they will fill it up instead of asking them to fill it up. So that would be an example of passive-aggressive behavior. So we know that it's challenging to make requests, especially for those that are passive, but really it can be difficult for all of us. And so Patterson gives some tips for making requests. And the first is to ask yourself what you want to happen. Often we don't think through that before we actually start talking, and so we have to know what do we want to happen. And then, is it reasonable given the circumstances? So yeah, we might want our boss to give us 6 weeks off vacation, but is that reasonable? So what is something that might be reasonable? Maybe we really want to have next Friday off because our best friend is getting married. That seems reasonable, and so being able to ask for that. We've talked about this throughout the whole book, but Patterson talks about not apologizing for asking, that we have a right to make requests, and so we don't need to apologize for that. And also not to put ourselves down when we're making that request. We talked about this when giving positive or negative feedback as well, but we don't want to do self-insult or it makes us look more passive, and it means the person might not take us as seriously and might not actually listen to our request. And then we want to word our request as a request, not as a demand. So not get me a glass of water, but could I have a glass of water, please? Patterson gives us this really helpful tool that is that he borrows from another author, and it's called the Dso Script, or that stands for describe, express, specify, and then outcome. And I think it's a really helpful way for those of us that have a difficult time making that request. It's a script that we can put together for any situation that can help us make that request a little bit easier. So the first thing is, we want to bear in mind that we want to be concise, and so these scripts don't need to be pages and pages long, really just 3, 4, 5 sentences. And so first we want to describe or define the situation. And when we're describing the situation, we want to focus on the behavior, again, not the person or the motive. So what is the person actually doing that you want to describe that? And then next you're going to express how you're feeling. So how does this situation make you feel? He talks about stating your emotions, not acting them out. So instead of yelling and screaming, you can just state, it makes me angry when, or this makes me angry. And then also, he talks about emphasizing the positive. So instead of saying, I feel miserable, saying something like, I feel better when we get to spend more time together, instead of, I feel miserable when you're never around, or I feel lonely when you're never around. Focusing on the positive, saying, I like spending time with you, or I feel better when I get to spend time with you. I feel more fulfilled when I get to spend time with you. We've talked about this a lot, using those I statements. And then lastly, avoiding martyrdom. What he means by this is sometimes we try to make the other person feel really guilty or exaggerate our hurts, and make us look more, try to play that victim card. And that most people can see through that. But even if not, it can undermine our request. And so we want to avoid doing that. The next step then is to specify. And so you're going to explain what you want to happen. So this is what that request is. You want to be clear but brief, and then frame the request positively. And again, focus on the behavior, not I want you to be more considerate, but I want you to put the dishes away before I get home from work. And then lastly is the outcome. What is the outcome that's going to happen if the person does this request? Sometimes we'll call it consequences, but they don't have to be negative, and it's actually better to explain a positive outcome or positive consequence. So sometimes the outcome is just going to be feelings. If you do this, I will feel better. It will make our relationship better. Results, sometimes there's an outcome, a tangible outcome, like we'll be able to complete the project faster. Or you can focus on that reward. If you do this, you'll be able to watch TV, or I'll go to that movie with you. Or you can use punishment, something like, or you will not be able to do something, or you will have to consider, terminating your employment if you're in a work situation. But really you want to use these very sparingly, because reward, as we've talked about, is more effective to get the results that you want as opposed to punishment. So Patterson gives several Dso examples in the book. I came up with one that could be related to nursing. And so it's written here. Mary, when you arrived late for your shift yesterday, I had to take on your patients as well as mine. So that's describing the situation. Mary was late, and what happened was I had to take care of her patients as well as my patients. And then I'm expressing my feelings. I was frustrated because I had a lot of work to do and felt like I couldn't do a good job with it all. And again, these are expressed as I statements. And then I would like you to come on time for your shifts going forward. I'm specifically saying what behavior I want to change. I want you to be on time. And then the outcome. By being on time, we can all share the work and provide the best patient care. So that's the outcome that I want to see. And that's focusing on that. The results is the outcome I focused on. You could say things like, if you're here on time, I'll buy you ice cream over your break, or something. You could give a reward, or again, if you're in a management role, it could be, you could share a punishment, like you will be docked pay, or I'll have to consider this during your performance evaluation. But again, especially if this is the first time, you want to focus on an outcome that is not a punishment or a negative consequence. So then the next chapter, Patterson goes into talking about this confrontation, that in all relationships there are going to be differences, and the differences are inevitable, but having a positive outcome when differences are present is possible. And often we think about confrontation as being negative, but it doesn't have to be. Really, all confrontation means is that you're addressing the issue. However, the confrontations for most people are challenging, and there's a number of reasons why that is. First, there's the complexity. Confronting someone requires us to use all the assertive skills, and the other person to use all their assertive skills that we've learned in this book, and that is very challenging for people. Also, the importance of the relationship can make things more difficult. The longer or the closer the relationship is, or the more we treasure that relationship, the harder it is when there's confrontations, because we are afraid of what's going to happen to that relationship. And then the importance of the issue. There are often issues that aren't that important, and we are fine if, the person doesn't put the cap on the toothpaste. Maybe not that big a deal. Maybe we don't want to have a large confrontation. But issues that are really important to us can make it more difficult to have those tough conversations. And then with differences, there's also some symbolic value to the issue. It's not just the fact that you didn't do the dishes, but maybe that holds some symbolic value, that I feel that you don't care about me, that you don't love me. Or maybe a person coming home late from work several nights during the week, that may have some symbolic value. I think he doesn't love me. I think he might be cheating on me. Those types of things. So it's not just the behavior. Sometimes there's some symbolic value as well. And then the length. These when confronting a person over a difficult situation, it can take some time, and it requires us to consistently use those assertive skills during a conversation that might last more than just a minute or two. And so being able to continue to use those assertiveness skills over a longer period of time can be challenging. But again, Patterson gives us a really good process to help us prepare for these confrontations. And so there's 10 steps that we'll walk through. First is we want to state the issue to yourself. So think about, what is the issue? And often we have an impression, we perceive the situation to be something, but we really need to dig deep and try to figure out what is the actual problem, because we can only solve problems. We cannot solve impressions. And so this takes some reflection, some brainstorming to really figure out what is that issue. And then also, once we know what the issue is some of the issue is there some symbolic value? So there's the actual situation and then what it symbolizes or what it means. And often that symbolic value is more reflective of you and your history than what's actually going on, what the actual problem is. And so being able to separate those things and focusing just on the actual situation may help during the confrontation. Then to yourself, you want to describe the problem in behavioral terms. This is important to do before the actual confrontation. So what are the behaviors that are an issue? So now we know what the issue is, but what are the specific behaviors? And it's important to think through this beforehand, because in the midst of the confrontation, it's hard for us to think clearly and identify those behaviors. And then we want to define the goal. What do we want to accomplish from this confrontation? If it's just to yell and let off some steam, then that's fine, but that likely is not going to lead to change. And so figuring out, what do you actually want to happen? Step 5 is, again, this is that reflective individual. Is it really you who needs to change? So maybe you've identified this person, I'm frustrated because this person always asks me to do, always go to the opera, and I hate the opera. And so now I want to confront the person on always asking or making us go to the opera. But then you realize, I've never said no. I've never told the person I don't like to go to the opera. So that may be something that you need to change, and really no confrontation is necessary. So that really requires you to be a reflective individual. And then step 6 is to pick those battles. Every issue does not need a confrontation. So some of those things, we realize this bothers us, but it's not so important that we want to have a confrontation over it, so we want to let it go. We want to focus on those battles that we can win. So if we've been having this conversation, for 30 years with no results, maybe you can work on, how can I let that go? I can't control that person's behavior. And that's the big thing with making these requests. We want to focus on, or when we're in the confrontation, we want to focus on controlling our behavior, not trying to control their behavior. We will never win if we're trying to control their behavior. Then we want to write that Dso script that we talked about in the last chapter, so we're ready. And then, importantly, we want to choose our place and time. So we want to, where is a good place to have this conversation, and when is a good time? You don't want to do it when you're really busy, when you're stressed, when you're tired, when you're hungry. So find a time that's going to work well for both people. And if it's not going to work, maybe somebody approaches you, it's okay to ask for more time or to do it at a different time if you think it'll allow for a better outcome. And then lastly, you want to ensure your safety. So we've talked about this before. If this person may be prone to violence, you want to find, maybe ask somebody else to be there or consult some other resources before confronting this person. I'm going to stop at this point for this PowerPoint because I only have 15 minutes when recording. We'll talk about the last chapter in the next recording. Thank you.